Thank you so much for joining us for this special Patreon-supported episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast. Joining me, well, you don't need much of an introduction for him. It's Tom Vasel from the Dice Tower. Tom, how are you doing this morning?
Good, thank you.
Fantastic. Well, I wanted to get into, we had a ton of questions for you over on our Board Game Geek Guild, and really, I'll start off at the beginning. Jeff M. wanted to know what inspired the idea for the Dice Tower Network, which is kind of the big podcast group that I think, what is it up to, 27 or so now? And what inspired that, and what inspired the Dice Tower in general? And I guess if we want to go sequentially, where did the Dice Tower come from?
Well, I just like talking about games. I've always wanted to do something give and take on the internet. When I first went to Korea, the internet was one of the ways I connected with people who spoke English, and I started playing board games, and that just seemed like a thing I could do. I could write reviews of board games. I've always wanted to be involved in the internet in some way. Way back when I played Overpower, the collectible card game, I started a website up about that. When I played 40K, I started a website up about that. I always wanted to do something. So when I started playing board games, I just started writing reviews. The name Dice Tower came when I started a podcast that I was able to leverage the people who read my reviews into that, and it just was a name that I thought up of. And so everything has always been very slow progressively, one thing at a time, one step at a time. Just over the last, I started writing reviews in 2002, so about 15 years of this now.
Wow. Did you ever imagine it would get as big as it's gotten?
No. I mean, there's always, I guess that's not true. I always imagined like amazing things happening in I have quite a wild imagination, with like a whole convention based around the Dice Tower, and then that stuff actually started happening. So,
well, it seemed to kind of steamroll one thing into another. Obviously, the videos start getting more views, the podcast starts getting more listens, and it seemed like because you'd laid so much of the groundwork, you were almost ready for the board game renaissance when it kicked in a sense. Is that how it felt like? I mean, when did things really start feeling like they were growing in a substantial way?
It's always been at a steady pace to some degree. And this is something that I think a lot of people, always think that they're looking for overnight success. And they always say overnight success takes 10 years. But I guess the biggest swing I saw was maybe when I went to video. Video's pretty potent.
What was the most difficult part about making that transition into video?
Well, just it was actually not as hard at first because I started doing video, and then I said, I'm going to stop writing and I'm just going to do video, which I was superbly pleased about because writing had become more and more work. I was writing, and then my wife was editing, and it was just a real pain. It was something I didn't enjoy doing that much. I liked the idea of it. I liked my words, but it's so much easier to talk. And I was like, hey, with a video, I don't have to do any editing at all. I just post it. Now, that's changed to where the editing for the videos is way more than the editing for those written reviews ever was. But I actually really enjoyed the video. It got more feedback than my written reviews did, and I like being expressive in person.
One of the kind of trademarks, the hallmarks, has been that component drop. When did that first come along, and what was the idea behind that?
Was it 2010? It's just that I had a camera. I got a new camera with a slow motion feature on it.
Okay, gotcha.
And I thought it'd be hilarious to drop pieces on the table in slow motion, and I did it, and it was one of those things that I just started and I kept doing. That happens every once in a while. I try different things out, and then I just keep doing it because I'm a big believer in trademarks or, something that separates you from everybody else. I saw a thread just today where people are like, why is everybody standing in front of their bookcase of games talking about board games? And when I did it, it was not a very common thing, but it is common now. But I still hope that my reviews stand out other than that. No one else is dumb enough to copy the component drop.
Well, you never know. What does a typical workday look like for you now with the Dice Tower?
There's really no typical days. Every day is different in what I'm doing. There are some days where I record all day long. There are days where I edit / prepare. There's a lot of preparation that goes into both the audio podcast and video and scheduling and preparing for conventions and coming back from conventions and playing games. And a typical day is just not really in the cards. Like, for example, today I'm doing this podcast, but I'm also trying to get ahead. I'm going to try to record some reviews, but I'm also planning my top 100 games of all time list. And I did some more top 10 list work today. And then also I'm looking to move out of my house into an office. So I had some of that I was working on today.
Wow. Dan Stanley wanted to know, have you hit the point yet with all of this where playing games feels more like a job rather than a game? I mean, have you soured at all to playing games for enjoyment because it's so much a part of your work and your livelihood now?
Not really, because I always liked doing that anyway. I always liked when I would play a game. When I played games for quote unquote for fun, I was always trying new ones out to see if I liked them or not. And I still do that now. I still get that same joy when I find a great game and that same anger when a game is not good. So I don't know. When I play a bad game, I'm like, man, this game's bad. Can't wait to tell people that.
What sticks out in your mind as the worst game you've ever reviewed? Is there one that comes to mind?
Not really. Maybe the worst review I ever did was one-upmanship, but really, there's so many bad games out there. I'm getting better at avoiding some of these games, but there's just a lot of really horrific games out there, mostly because someone just decided to have an idea and they half published the game in a sense. But we're starting to avoid more and more of that because we have restrictions on what we will review and won't review.
Interesting. In meaning a game has to be of a certain size or...
Well, we won't review self-published games. That cuts out a lot of bad reviews right there.
Yep.
But I mean self-published, I mean basically, or print and play. Even when someone asks me to review a game, I always say, well, send me a website. And there are so many games you can just look at and go, yeah, no. And that way I can just, nicely let them down and say, this isn't a game that we're really interested in reviewing. And that just cuts a lot of that dross out because there's so many games that come out over the course of the year. Probably 10,000 games, maybe? No, that might be too many. But like 2,000 or 3,000 games, maybe. And if you include self-published games, then it really is 10,000. Well, I'm going to cut out like 5,000 games right there.
And I got to tell you, remembering back on that one-upmanship interview, it might not be a bad thing if you dipped your toe in for a couple of those every now and then, just because that was absolutely hilarious. I'm sure it was aggravating to play, but it was absolutely hilarious to watch that review.
Well, I understand that, and I'm sure that will happen in the future. It's just that while those reviews are funny, and they're not, I won't lie, they're fun to do to some degree, it's not as useful to people because a lot of these smaller games that people put out themselves are never going to go anywhere anyway. So I'm kind of wasting everyone's time by reviewing it. I should review games that you will see at your shelf in the store. Our goal at the Dice Tower is when you go to your game store and you look around at all the games there, that we've reviewed all of them. Now, that's not going to ever happen, probably, but we're coming close.
Dan Stanley wanted to know if you guys are thinking of moving more towards playthrough videos, kind of more in the vein of Watch It Played or Rahdo Runs Through, something along those lines. Is that kind of a future way you guys might look to expand?
No, not really. First of all, Watch It Played does a really good job at that. I think there's a difference between Watch It Played is doing instructional videos. Right. He does playthroughs, but he does mostly instructional videos. Rahdo does the playthroughs. We do some live playthroughs, but I'm always very conscious of, on my channel, I don't ever want to put anything that I hate watching. So I'm not a big fan of watching playthroughs of games that aren't that interesting to watch. So I got to be really cautious here. I'm not saying that people who do so are boring or bad. That's their shtick, and I'm glad for it. But I'm not interested in watching someone puzzle out in their head what to do. There are some games that are hilarious to watch. Party games are usually interesting to watch. Some, take that style games can be fun to watch. And there's even a couple Euro games that are fun to watch, but not usually. They're fun to play, but not necessarily so much fun to watch. That's the same reason I don't do unboxing videos, because I absolutely detest them watching them. So I don't really want to put them on my channel.
Fair enough.
I found that, in life, you're never going to please everybody.
I can imagine that.
You're not even going to please maybe most of the people. So when I make the videos, I try to please myself in a sense. I try to make stuff that I would watch. And that's always been my mantra with reviews. There's always this people who say, the Dice Tower does not do deep critical analysis. Yeah, because I hate deep critical analysis. I'm sure some people like it, and that's fine. And there will be people who will do that stuff. I want to know, did you have fun playing that game? So that's what we do. We tell you if the game is fun to play.
Yeah, sounds simple enough. Although obviously, when you're doing video reviews and doing enough of them, as I'm sure you know better than anyone, maybe not as simple as it would appear to the outside eye. And you mentioned you're a big dreamer. When you're looking, say, 5-10 years down the road at the Dice Tower and what the Dice Tower can do and what the Dice Tower can be, what do you see? What's the vision there?
I don't know. See, that when I said I dreamed about those things in the past, that was just like imagination. I never actually occurred to me that those things would happen. Nowadays, I try to be more pragmatic in what I'm dreaming, and it's hard for me to figure out where we could go from there. I look at like small things, like when will we get 3 million views in a month? That's like my next goal, to get 3 million views in 1 month, or to get 150,000 views on my video in one day, or to get a podcast downloaded 60,000 times. Those are the things I look for, because when that happens, I'm like, ooh, that's another milestone. The Dice Tower cruise this year, we have 400 people going on it, but my dream would be to have a whole ship that's just Dice Tower. But I don't know. Things could change. I mean, they're making a point where Dice Tower shrinks a bit. I hope not, but it might happen. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to when the Dice Tower convention is like 8,000 people. I'm excited about that.
Well, and that was another question we got. This one was from Paul Grogan, who A, wanted to know how you liked being on Gaming Rules, but B, wanted to know, yeah, little self plug there.
So far, the best podcast I've ever been on outside of ours.
Oh, fantastic!
Wait,
I'm
you're
sure
not supposed to say fantastic.
He'll like to hear
You're supposed to
that.
be disappointed that I said that.
No, it's okay. It's a one-on-one interview, Tom. You're only getting half of the Duke's experience. Sean's not here. I don't take it. I'm the other Duke, so it's all.
I
good.
have the better Duke. How's that?
Oh, I like that. We'll go with that. All right, but Paul wanted to know what do you see as the biggest challenge in doubling the size of Dice Tower Con? Because it certainly went off really well this year. I having been to 2 years in a row and seeing the differences between the 2 years, it seemed to go off without a hitch, really, at least from a convention goer side of things.
Well, it went off without. I mean, there was some hitches and stuff that you
Sure.
don't see behind the scenes, but it went off mostly without a hitch because the size did not increase that much. We went from 1,200 to 1,500.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Next year, what you'll see, we're going from 1,500 to 3,500. That's a huge increase. So problems that we'll have there, library is going to be one of them. Getting people to, we have to make the library bigger so that people can check games out. One of the problems that we've had at the Dice Tower Con, it's a smallish problem, but there are people who are simply selfish and check games out for all day. Well, I'm trying to figure out some kind of way to stop people from doing that. For example, what some people will do is there's like 4 people together and they'll check out 4 games and then they'll go play those for 8-9 hours in a row. They do that because they don't want to go check out a game and then come back and check out or come back to get the game they want and it's not there. And while that works out really well for them, if someone wants one of those 4 games, they can't get it. And those people aren't playing it either. It's just sitting there. So trying to figure out a way to stop that without being authoritative and annoying about it is kind of a thing. And just, dealing with all the more people is going to, the bigger the crowds get, the more outlier people who are just not fun to game with are going to show up. So how do we deal with that? Because so far the convention has been very, very people friendly and everything. And also the Dice Tower, we're growing, but there's only so much of us to go around. I can't play a game with everybody at Dice Tower Con even now. It's going to get worse as time goes by. So trying to make sure I say hello to everybody at the convention is going to get harder, obviously, as it gets bigger. We'll try, of course, but that's just the way things are when you grow.
But it sounds like you're more excited than worried about something like that.
Oh, yeah, because my biggest, I got to be careful. I don't know if it's my biggest, but one of the big things I fight in board gaming is exclusiveness and snottiness. I really don't like it. I'm at the point now where I can be in the in club. I can get invited to many conventions, small, private conventions. I can finagle an invitation to them. But why? Am I better than, Joe Schmo or Sally so-and-so? No, I'm not really, but it's because, I'm in the industry and people know who I am. I don't necessarily like that sort of stuff. I don't want a convention where, we sold out in 12 minutes. That's exciting to say. Like, woo, we sold out in 12 minutes. Yeah. But it's not so much exciting for the people who couldn't make it in. And they sit there and be like, oh, man, I wish I could go. Well, I'm sorry. You can't. No. So I want everybody who wants to be in gaming, I want them involved. And so I'd rather be big and lose a slight bit of that personal touch than have this small, warm, family-friendly feeling, but we don't want strangers, thank you very much.
Well, and you mentioned that sold out in 12 minutes. I only got in this past year by the grace of Suzanne Sheldon picking up an extra ticket and slipping it my way. That's the only way I was able to get in, so I understand this idea of kind of wanting to expand the pool and make it easier for more folks to attend. Because it sold out crazy fast this year.
Right.
What are the other benefits you see of expanding into 3,500? Is it going to afford you guys the abilities to bring in more designers for panels, things like that?
Well, the bigger you get, the more we can do. The convention is run by Patrick Haver, who does a great job. And Patrick does not run this convention to make a profit. I mean, I think he makes some sort of profit, and that's fantastic. But he's not like trying to make a ton of money. And so, but the more money we get from having people allows us to get a bigger convention space. I mean, you saw the space this year. It's I think, one of the best spaces for a convention, period. It was big. It was open. It was neat. The hotel is by far the best hotel of any convention, board game convention. And having more money allows us to bring in maybe some more guests. Although we're not, me and Patrick talk about this sort of thing. We're not trying to bring in people just to have names on a roster. Like, I don't know that I would ever want to bring in some famous TV person who once said they liked the board game, so we would bring them in. We would bring in maybe somebody like Rich Sommer who loves board games, but we're not going to bring in someone to do like a signing autograph thing in the back. I don't want to do that. I want this to be a fun, entertaining time. But having that money allows us to have more hallways, to provide cooler aspects. So that's the benefit of having a bigger thing. And the benefit of having a bigger event is now all the publishers say, ooh, well, I'd like to be there. And we had a few publishers as the years have gone by, but next year we're going to have more publishers because we're bigger. And that's then it's more exciting for people to come to.
Well, and I'm trying to think of that personal touches, and I'm curious to see how that's going to be affected by the 3,500. I can't see how it won't be. But there were great moments. I remember Sean buying all of those card sleeves off of you. You were walking down the lines with boxes and boxes and boxes of those card sleeves. And I remember at some point you just cut them off, right?
I had to cut them off because that's what you do to addicts.
Yeah.
You got to. If they're not willing to stand up, you got to help them. And so, this is your public service announcement, guys. If you know someone who's a sleever, it's time for you to tell them no. Tell them when they've gone too far.
I want to switch gears a little bit over into your designs, and there have been a couple that you've had published: Vicious Fishes and Nothing Personal. I think everyone who games enough probably has some aspirations of putting out a game. But you didn't just put out a game; you actually put out a pretty quality game, especially with Nothing Personal. That was one that really caught a lot of people's attention. Where did what was the genesis of that and designing that game?
Well, if you notice, Vicious Fishes has sold like 50 copies.
Right.
Nothing Personal, a couple thousand. So the difference being I had a co-designer with Nothing Personal. I don't know that I want to design another game. I did it because I had a good idea, not because I was sitting around going, I must design a game. The idea came to me in a boring meeting, as almost all meetings are. And so I worked on it there. I asked Steve to get involved, and we went back and forth. I would say the game is pretty much a 50% him, 50% me design. We had a lot of talking about it, a lot of different things we went back and forth on. It was a fun experience. I do not think everyone needs to be a game designer. Having played many games, I know not everyone's a game designer. But I did enjoy it. I would rather be more of a developer. I think when a game comes in, I would say, hey, this works, this doesn't work type situation. But even that, I'm really happy playing finished games. It was an interesting experience, and there was good things. There were things that were not always so thrilling. But for the most part, it's kind of cool to have a game with my name on it. I won't lie about that. If I was putting it out now, it's been out, 3 years now? Maybe 3.5 years? I would change a lot of things about it. I would streamline it more. Vicious Fishes, I would just chuck that one probably. There's maybe an idea there for a good game, but I don't know.
Well, and what is it about game design that you learned from going through that process more heavily, especially with someone like Stephen Avery? Did that give you better insight into how you approached reviews going forward? Yeah,
I might be kinder to rulebook writing for one after that game, but working with a co-designer is both good and bad. It's good because you have someone else coming up with ideas. It's bad because you have to compromise sometimes. You might really like an idea and they're saying, hey, this doesn't work here. Also, when you co-design, unless you are perfectly in tune, someone has to say, well, I'm co-designer number one. Because if you do disagree, someone needs to make the final call. So you got to be careful about that. You have to have a good relationship with the person. It's very difficult to co-design distance-wise. I mean, Steve and I got together, I think, like twice over the course of designing Nothing Personal. I would have preferred to have done it more than that because you get so much more done in person. When we did meet up, we got so much more done than we did apart. But I don't know that I would that changes much how I review games. Like, oh, well, now that I know how hard it is to design, I will allow this piece of garbage to be published without a thought. No, I'm still going to call you out on it.
And is it because, what was it about the process that was not as fun that has you say, I don't know if I want to design a game again? Or is it something that you, if you had the right idea, you would go into that, dip your toe into those waters again?
Trying to phrase this properly. The things I don't like about the process is I don't want to play the same game 100 times. So designing is probably not for me. It's also difficult to pick out for me. Everyone's going to give negative feedback about your game. That's fine. But it's sometimes hard when it seems like you're not pleasing everybody. So you got to kind of say, okay, 8 people like this, 2 people didn't. So I'm probably going to keep this part. Yeah, those 2 people hated it, but I'll have to let that go. And then I also would highly recommend with every game that you publish to check out the publisher that you're going to publish with, to talk to other designers who work with that publisher, and just kind of feel out how they're going to go about, how much of the game control they're going to take, what they need you to do, what they want you to do, how other people enjoy working with them. Because if you go in with the right expectations, you will enjoy working with your publisher more.
Well, and you guys have seemed to have formed a very good relationship now with Arcane Wonders with the Dice Tower Essentials line. Some great hits out of that line when you're looking at Sheriff of Nottingham, especially as one that has really stuck with me.
Actually, it's interesting. Sheriff of Nottingham has done phenomenally well, right? It's sold over 100,000 copies. That's a pretty big deal for a board game. But Onitama is actually outselling what I thought it would do too. It's not going to sell probably over 100,000, but it has already gone over 20,000, which for an abstract game is phenomenal.
Well, and it's a phenomenal game. Both of those are really phenomenal games. And then you have Royals obviously coming down the line. How has working on that line been? Has that been, what kind of involvement do you guys have? I mean, are you handpicking these?
Yes, I am handpicking them. It's kind of tough because I want the games to be games that are like amazing. And so in one aspect, I like it because when I talk about these games, I can really talk them up. And I don't feel like with nothing personal, I always walk this fine line of like, am I allowed to say my own game is good? You know, can I promote it? Should I talk about it here? It's kind of a weird feeling. With these games, I have no problem at all because I didn't design them. Other people did. And I have no problem saying these guys made great games. These are great games. The difficult thing is once the line is successful, and it is successful, then everyone comes to me and says, hey, Tom, I got a game. I know you'll love it. I'm like, well, I don't really want to play it. You know? So it's getting harder for me to maybe find these games. Also, I'm always looking for great games to add to this line. Do you know what every other publisher is also doing? They're looking for great games to add to their lines.
No, really?
And there is a fierce competition out there. Like at Essen, you better have a game that you want done in the first 10 minutes. Like, for example, 2 years ago, was it 2 years ago? I think it was. Yeah, it was 2 years ago. Like, I played Spyfall, and I was like, we must add Spyfall to Dice Tower Essentials. This is amazing. And I was like an hour late. You know, Cryptozoic beat me to the punch on that one. And I don't blame them because it was a good game. But it's like that with every game. As soon as I played Onitama, I was like, we got to get this. And it was like all this headache because you're emailing back and forth. You're like, I hope no one else has played this game. I hope no one else has seen this game because that's how good this game is. Come on. That's very headachy for me. I don't really like doing that, especially when the people that I'm competing with, I like them. You know, it's not like I beat you guys and then go home at night. Or if they beat you, they're like, oh, that Bonnegar guy, he got that game. Well, good for him. You know, it's just a weird thing. You know, I like the other publishers. I want to get these games in my line, but if they get them, that's good. Good job, guys.
Well, you got a track record to continue here too. I mean, it's when you've had a Sheriff of Nottingham sell as well as it has, when you've had an Onitama be as well received as it has, and I know there's certainly some buzz for Royals. Yeah, there's I got to imagine there's at least a bit of pressure there.
There is a bit of pressure. I'm always cautioning people saying, you know, not everything is going to be Sheriff of Nottingham. Onitama and Royals, and Speechless, they should all do well, but they're not going to be a phenomenon like Sheriff was because Sheriff just hits every right spot. It's family friendly. It's fun. It feels unique. You know, it just hits that right thing. I do think that our upcoming mech game is going to do really well. But you never know. I might be wrong.
Okay, now I'm intrigued by the upcoming mech game, if only, I guess, because of the ties to size, but also because mechs are generally cool. And what can you tell us about that?
Okay, so the game is called Critical Mass. This is a 2-player mech game, and I believe the mechs are going to be done in an old style, like a 1950, think Iron Giant style. Gotcha. Okay, so they're going to be, you have these two mechs that are fighting each other, and it's a card game. And so what you're doing in this game, it uses one of my favorite mechanisms where you play a card from your hand, and then once you play it, you can't play it again until you play a card that lets you pick up all your cards. And so you'll play a card, and each person reveals their card, and there's like faster lasers that will do fewer damage. But if you do that, you can hit your opponent, and then he doesn't have a chance to hit you back. So you got to try to figure out the right time to play the right one. Or you might have a card that dodges right when you think your opponent's going to play that heavy laser. And every time you hit your opponent, you'll be peeling off armor off of them. And so each mech has a very different feel. Some mechs are heavily armored with some heavy lasers, but they're slower. There's lighter, faster ones. But then you can also upgrade and add level 2 and 3 technologies to your mech. These new cards that come in your hand that do all kinds of cool effects. And those are going to be different for every mech. At the beginning, they're pretty similar. They might have, different arrangements of lasers and things, but they're pretty similar in how they feel. But as you add these upgrades, it's going to be very different. And so there's really no luck in the game. You're just trying to outthink the other player. And I'll tell you, as soon as I played it, I fell in love with it. I played it multiple times. Very much looking forward to seeing this one finished.
Interesting. Any sense on when to expect that one?
I'm pretty sure this will be, I would guess that you'll see this one summer of 2017.
Got it. Okay. So a little less than a year.
Let's hope so. There's a lot that goes into a game. Besides playtesting, there's also production and art and such. But I think we're into the pre-production phase for that game at this point.
All right, I wanted to switch gears back to the Dice Tower, and Kevin Haar wanted to know how has your family really contributed to the Dice Tower and how it's been? Obviously, folks see your daughters in the videos all the time, but how has your family really helped with the Dice Tower and helped make the Dice Tower what it is?
Well, I guess by being supportive. I don't know what you mean. I mean, my wife edited my reviews back in the day,
right? And
she is allowing me to do this, so that's very it's wonderful of her. I mean, and I get the kids involved and such, but they have lives, right? They have school and all sorts of things. So I never want to push them above and beyond that. Melody doesn't seem to want to take the Dice Tower over someday, and that's fine. So I'm not trying to push that on her. If I hand the Dice Tower off to anybody, I'm cool with that.
But having that support network has to be huge, and I'd imagine it's also when you can get your daughters involved. I gotta imagine that's great for you as a dad to be able to kind of have the Dice Tower be a family affair.
Yeah, well, my kids like being in the videos anyway, so it's just fun for them.
Fair enough. And then he also wanted to know what's the most rewarding experience that you've had with the Dice Tower?
The single most rewarding experience?
Well, or some of the most. I mean, you could go a little bit more broad if you'd like.
I have a folder of emails that I keep where people will send things in about how an aspect of the Dice Tower has changed their life, or they played games and now they're closer with their family or whatever. And those are moments like those are really great. Conventions are fantastic. Every convention is always good. You go to a convention and people come up and say hi to you and talk to you, and it's fun to see things that you did on the internet people actually appreciate and enjoy. That's what I like the best.
Well, and I would have to imagine, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I have to imagine the work with the Jack Vasel Memorial Fund has to be especially rewarding. It's been amazing to see how that's grown and how much support you guys end up getting for that.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. It's actually coming up very soon where we'll be starting our annual auction for that. So I'm excited to see where that goes and just the people that were able to help. And that all came from board gaming, which is exciting.
And for the folks out there who don't know, what does the Jack Vasel Memorial Fund do?
Now, I always clarify this. The Jack Vasel Memorial Fund is a separate organization in the Dice Tower. I just happen to run both of them. The Jack Vasel Memorial Fund is for people who have had catastrophic things happen to them, whether their house burned down or some major medical thing, and they can't afford it. They can't. It's like causing problems financially. Well, then the Jack Vasel Memorial Fund's there to help as soon as possible, to be able to get you money or to get you the items you need, or to help in your time of extreme need. You can find out more at jackvasel.org.
And who are some people that you guys have helped recently? Some stories that stick out, because I think a lot of folks know that this goes to a great cause, but I think it's always cool to hear.
Well, I got to be very cautious in that regard, because I never talk about people's stories on my own usually because it may be private. We never want this to be like we'll help you, but please tell everybody we did.
Right.
In the past, we have helped, like I said, we've helped people whose houses burned down. We help people who've lost children or have had debilitating sicknesses. We helped a widow whose husband died suddenly. He was actually doing reviews on the internet, and he just died at young in his early 20s, left her and some kids behind. We were able to step in and help there financially. And so we're able to help in different situations. There are some testimonials on the site. We will be trying to get some more testimonials up when the auction runs and such. And I'm being vague now because I'm not off the top of my head. I'm not sure which ones want to be public or not.
Right, I understand.
But we definitely help a lot of people over the course of the year.
Yeah, and it's pretty amazing to see the support you guys get, and pretty amazing I just have to, it's a fantastic organization. I hope folks out there support it when auction time comes around. One more interesting we got a question from Nick Hayes, and Nick was curious about when you see things that might be objectionable material in games. Being a Christian, how do you handle that? How do you address that when you see a game like Lap Dance come around or something along those lines?
For the Dice Tower itself is a family-friendly show, so if I believe I cannot show the content in a family-friendly manner,
sure,
I won't have it on the show. If I personally wouldn't play the game, it's not on the show either. So, for example,
have you had to refuse games due to the theme or the content?
Oh man, I refuse games all the time based on that. And I always know that the people who email me about these games lie because they'll be like, "We love your show that you put on YouTube.
Right.
And we are big fans of your work on board games. And we've decided that Cards Against Humanity wasn't dirty enough. So here comes our new version." No. And I mean, seriously, we get these all the time. It's basically Cards Against Humanity's ripoffs of some sort of fashion. And they're like, "You thought Cards Against Humanity was too tame? This game's for you." And I just say that's not something that we would take a look at, as you would know if you watched our channel, which you don't.
Are there things that maybe aren't as obvious as that? Obviously, if you're going dirtier than Cards Against Humanity, I can imagine with a family-friendly show, even Cards Against Humanity is a bit of a stretch. Have there been other examples like that where a theme you've just had to say, "No, I don't think I can do this. I don't think this will work for what we do"? I've
refused a few games in the past for various reasons. I gotta be careful. I'm not trying to cherry pick a game. I'll give one example. I'm always very cautious. Like, for me, there's a difference between something that's happened in the past and something that's happening now. So that's why I can play a game like Guillotine about the French Revolution, although I'm sure the French Revolution was a horrific time to deal with. Than I would be about a game about modern terrorism, which is something that's happening right now. So those are like a game about modern terrorism or that glorifies modern terrorism. I'm very cautious of games like that.
So if there's some sort of historical distance to it, it's not as present. That's something that...
Yeah, it's kind of like, for example, they just made not that they didn't just make it, but about, 15, 20 years ago, they made the Titanic movie. All right, very popular movie. How comes we haven't seen a movie just like that made about 9/11? That's because that's too close to home, right? There are people who know people who were in the Twin Towers, or they know people who know people. You know what I mean? It would be fresh. It would be if someone made a movie that was like about that and there was star-crossed lovers in those towers and things, you would see an outcry against that, right?
Yes, no doubt.
You definitely would. But I bet you in 100 years there's a movie made about it.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair enough.
Probably, because it happens all the time. We made movies about Pearl Harbor, and I don't think they would have made that in the 50s, early 50s, although they did make Tor. But I don't know when Tor was made. But what I'm saying is that time changes things. So I think you have to be sensitive about, and also just about things that are, if a game is overtly racist, I think we should not play that game, probably. There's a whole pile of things.
Phil Hendrickson wanted to know, how do you see the role of the game reviewer in this industry changing?
It's harder because more people are doing it. Everybody wants to start a podcast now. It's difficult to make a podcast unique and different. Most podcasts are two guys talking back and forth about board games.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Two white middle-class guys, actually, if I'm going to be more specific.
Man. Oh, no.
Well, right. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the role of the board game reviewer now is how can you be different? How can you be entertaining? I mean, right now, even in board game reviews, I'd say video reviews, you find people following one of two styles. They're either going to follow the Vasel style, where it's like intro, where you overview and final thoughts, or they're following the shut up and sit down style, which is let's be funny the whole time and review the game in the middle of that. And those are both valid ways to review a game, but it's hard to try to think of some different way, some new thing to show. But the reviewers are just there to tell people if games are fun or not. I don't want to put any kind of we are the gatekeepers of the hobby, because we're not. We're just telling people if games are fun or not. And I think when we think of ourselves as higher than that, that's problematic.
I think that's fair enough. All right, wanted to close it on a bit of a lighter note before I let you go, and I thank you so much again for the time. BJ from Board Game Gumbo had a Louisiana-themed question: Scrapple or beignets?
What?
Yeah, that's the question. Scrapple? I don't know. Have you tried Scrapple? I haven't tried
I've
Scrapple.
Had Scrapple.
I
don't know what the second one was.
Beignet, and I may be totally butchering the pronunciation. Spelled Beignets. But I think it sounds like Scrapple might win by default. Beignets.
Never had them.
All right. So Scrapple by default, I guess.
Also, because I said I did not have them, does not mean I suddenly need to have them from everybody telling me how great they are. If I run across them, I'm sure I would try it. They look good in the pictures.
All right. GP wanted to know if you were making a lunch with one breakfast item and one dinner item, what would your favorite lunch be?
I'm sorry. Go ahead again.
Yeah, I know it's a little nutty. If you were making a lunch with one breakfast item, kind of your favorite breakfasty thing, and your favorite dinner thing, and you had to combine them to make a lunch, what would that lunch be? Okay,
see, I'm gonna say I would have taco salad. And you'll say, well, Vasel, where's the breakfast food? And then I will tell you, why am I constrained by cultural use for breakfast food? I'll eat what I want for breakfast, thank you. I'll eat what I want for dinner and for lunch. There is no difference between the meals other than time of day.
Well, and in fairness, anyone listening from Texas will tell you that breakfast tacos are a thing.
No, tacos can be eaten for breakfast. Tacos can be eaten for lunch. Ice cream can be eaten for all three meals. Pizza can be eaten for all three meals. It does not matter. Don't let yourself be restrained by what other people tell you can and cannot eat for meals.
And the final food-related question, if you could be any flavor of ice cream, what flavor would you be and why?
I have no... That's a dumb question.
Well, I'm good at that.
I'm sorry to the person who asked it.
That was me. No, I just came up with that on the spot, so it's fine. It's okay, Tom. You're not disappointing anyone. You're just disappointing this lonely podcaster. These questions make no sense. They're like fake psychological. So I'm going to say chocolate chip cookie dough, because that's what I like to eat. That's my favorite flavor. So I'm picking that friend. There's no psychological backing to that at all. Well, I think folks will read as they will, right? My birthday cake was just made of that ice cream, so that's good. Oh yeah, speaking of which, happy 40th. How does that feel? Same. Oh. But I mean, now I can say I'm 40, so that's cool. Right. Yeah, right. 39, you're just kind of waiting, I guess, but I don't know. Yeah. That's right. I'm in my 40s. My kids said I'm old. Uh-oh. That's cool. I like being old. Well, okay. So do you feel old? Do you feel old? Oh, uh-oh. Okay. I see what you're doing there. I get it. Yep. All right. Tom Vasel, thank you so much. If folks want to follow you or the Dice Tower, I'm sure most of them who are listening know how, but just throw it out there anyway, Tom. How can folks get in touch with you, interact with you, see what you guys are putting out there if they'd like to? If you want to find us, thedicetower.com is our website. Also, we have a pretty active Facebook presence and YouTube presence, so that's easy enough to find us there on Dice Tower. Thank you so much, Tom. Really appreciate it. All right. Well, thank you, sir.